Spent 27 years in prison, been out 9 years. The most dreadful thing about being in prison. Now, I know some of y'all may think that it's getting essayed by an officer or excessive force used on you by an officer or disrespected by an officer or maybe a fight or getting something stolen from you. The most dreadful thing about being in prison is to lose a loved one. When you lose a loved one in prison, time don't stop for you. You still have to cooperate with the rules and the regulations and what the system has going on. While you needing to grieve, you still having to get up, make up your bed, walk in the yellow line, deal with all the hollering, deal with all the streaming, deal with everything that's going on. You still got to deal with inmates being ignorant. You got to deal with officers coming in there taking their personal problems out on you. There's no way you can process this thing. Like, there is no time for you to deal with the loss. Like, you just going through the compound like mummified. You just numb. You just walking in your feelings and nobody understand what it is that you going through. They don't understand you just lost somebody because you can't tell nobody. Even if you did tell somebody, there's no outlet. I mean, you can find that inmate to say, hey, I lost my mom, I lost my dad, but still, there's no comfort or consolation, because if you hug that person, guess what? You're going to get rolled up for inappropriate touching, physical contact, DR. So you're really not allowed to really grieve or comfort the person. Sometimes you may have officers that don't really care about all the physical contact, especially when you lost somebody. They'll let you hug that person. They'll let you talk to that person. But that don't help, because you still need room and time to process this. And the bad thing about it is that you don't even get to go to the funeral. You don't even get to leave the prison to go to the funeral, especially if you close custody. If you close custody, you can't even go. Now, you may be able to go to the funeral if you medium or minimum custody. You may get to go to the funeral if your family pay that fee. If they don't have the money to pay that fee, then you ain't going. Security got to escort you. Sometimes, depending on how close you are to going home, they may let your family pick you up, but they got to have you back at a certain time. So you may be able to go to the funeral, but you may not be able to go to the burial, because you got to be back at a certain time. And depending on where the funeral is held at, while you trying to go through all that and process all that, you still having to go to your job. You still having to do your daily duties of the prison. You don't get a pass. You still got to be an inmate. And I know a lot of y'all might say, you shouldn't have did crime. You wouldn't have to be doing the time. I don't know who can relate to this, but hearing the cry of a mother, she lose her child. I was in confinement one day, and I heard the scream of a mother that lost her child to a drive-by while she was in prison. And I'm laying there, and that thing pierced me so bad, tears rolled out my eyes. All you can hear her saying was, no, my baby, my baby. And she was close custody. So this girl didn't get to go to her own child funeral. And that thing traumatized me. And for the remaining of her time, as far as I know, I think she's still in there. She walked around like this, because that forever changed her. And then I remember when my favorite cousin and my nephew died. I was at a retreat in the chapel doing a chapel service, but I was a chapel orderly. So when they called me to the back, it didn't seem abnormal. Usually when a chaplain call you, you know somebody done died. You know somebody done passed away. We already know what time it is. So we standing on the side. We standing on the sideline just waiting to be able to swoop in and say, you all right? Because we know that at any moment with this person walking out of the chapel, they finna break down. They about to start crying. It's that dam about to break. That water about to come, because we already know what time it is. We know how it go when the chaplain call you. But see, it wasn't that normal for the chaplain to call me, because I was an orderly and already inside the chapel when it happened. So when they called me to tell me that my nephew had passed, they called me to the back. So when I stepped back out, they didn't think none of it, because I worked there. And I just kept that thing to myself. I didn't say nothing. I just kept going about my business. I just kept like living life. And sometimes, you may have good officers come beside you and try to console you. That's shallow. Because at the end of the day, they ain't understanding what it is you feel. At the end of the day, they ain't understanding what it is you going through. We on two different sides of this thing. See, you can go home and be with your people if something like that happened, but we can't. And as much as the officer try to console us, it don't seem real. It just don't seem authentic to us, man. And there are some good officers in there, and they do try to talk to you and everything, but don't nobody want to hear no counseling. No, nobody want to hear none of that stuff. I want somebody who know what I'm going through when I'm going through this thing. So, man, that mother was in there screaming, and I was just so hurt for her. And when they brought her by to talk to her, because they was taking her to, bringing her out of the cell to take her to the psych ward, they had a chain. And all I could do was just look at her. I looked in her eyes, man. It's like her eyes pierced me. And then I knew what she was going through because I lost my mom at the age of 3. That kind of triggered me, man, looking at that, you know, and I'm just standing there, tears rolling out my eyes. And I'm hurting for this girl because now I'm replaying my own traumatic experience while I'm watching her go through hers. And I'm like, so, you know, I'm saying, Lord, help her, man. Please, God, help her. So I don't know what the outcome of that situation was or anything like that. Man, that scream. But yeah, when I lost my nephew, man, I just sucked it up. I ain't tell nobody. You know, I went on with life like, because I just felt like nobody would understand. So the most dreadful thing is to lose someone in prison, y'all. I don't know who all can relate to that, but that thing is dreadful and it hurts.
My sister, she came to see me every Christmas, every birthday. She came to see me. 20-some years in prison. She got in an altercation with her boyfriend, broke her neck, paralyzed. She died. And I still was in prison. It devastated me. That was one of my worst fears in prison. My mom dying while I was in prison. My mom dying in prison. My dad had died of cancer. But my mom, that was my worst fear because it's something about that cry when your mother dies. And you know, when somebody's parents die, you know they cry when somebody's parent dies in prison. I done seen the biggest man in the world, the biggest dudes in the world in the fetal position. When you lose your mom in prison, there's a cry in prison that you do not want to hear. You already know they mama gone. And I was saying all the time, man, Lord, don't let my mama die while I'm in prison. I don't like to take it. Don't let her die while I'm in prison.
Just imagine not being able to be involved with any of the process that a normal person would go through when you lose somebody. You're stuck in a cell. You're stuck there by yourself with a bunch of strangers. Yeah, you might have some friends. You might have made some bonds, whatever, but like it doesn't matter. They're not family. They don't understand. They don't have the connection that you have to that person. So knowing that a family member is sick, and again, particularly a child or a parent, knowing that a family member is sick, knowing that someone has had a sudden death, an accident, something unexpected, knowing that all of the funeral, the preparation, the sending them off is going to be done without you, and you will never not only get to say goodbye, but you will also never be able to go back and participate in those traditions. It's like you have no closure. You have literally no closure. And so you will grieve and you will suffer while you're in there. And then when you get out, you will go through the entire cycle all over again. And being in a penitentiary, being inside those 4 walls of your cell and just having to cry it out and knowing that you are completely helpless to do anything, that is one of the worst feelings. I saw people quite literally grown, thugged out, bad to the bone, gangster, hardcore people break down to the core in these situations. When you get called to the chaplain's office or you get called down to the chapel, most people start crying right there because they know something has happened and somebody is sick, injured, or gone.
Anybody, if you have any family that's in prison, man, keep up with your family. You know, stay in contact with your family. And always keep your family posted, no matter what's going on, no matter how it hurt. Y'all be blessed now, yeah.